free, we're marching to Zion. Let's stand as we sing.
Lord, and just pray for this opportunity to give back to you, Lord. Pray that you'll help us to do that joyfully, Lord, and be with the rest of the service this afternoon, Lord. And we ask these things in Jesus' name.
Oh no, the old story will never grow old. How Jesus died to save my soul. No, the old story will never grow old. That story will never grow old. I went to the church one lonely night, and I sat way back, for my soul was not right. The preacher was preaching how Jesus died for sin for the world. He gave up his life. Oh no, the old story will never grow old. How Jesus died to save my soul. No, the old story will never grow old. That story will never grow old. I went to the altar and knelt down in prayer, and I cried, Lord have mercy, and he pardoned me there. And he lifted my burden, brought peace to my soul. What made my life new was that story so old. Many years have passed by since I met the Lord. I remember that night when that story was told. Time has no hold on the message it brings. That story is old, but it still blesses me. Oh no, the old story will never grow old. How Jesus died to save my soul. No, the old story will never grow old. That story will never grow old. That story will never grow old.
Amen.
Age 355, what a friend we have in Jesus.
His arms shall take and shield me. All right, we're going to have Brother Buhrow come on up here and do the second part of his first part, but he's going to make his second part now. And so we have his little slide and then a little video, so he'll tell you more about that. But give him your undivided attention as he talks about why he's doing Baptist for Life and the meaning of the thing. You still there?
I have a little video. Delaney Appling and the Wisconsin Family Council had put this on her website, and I thought it was kind of neat. It's debunking abortion, and it's about 4 minutes long, but you have to pay attention. It goes really fast. The amount of us old people, we have a hard time keeping up. So you can play it.
All right, here we go. This one's going to be a rough journey that triggers some emotional dissonance and challenges some preconceptions. But hey, that's what debunk is all about. And these things got to happen to get to the truth of a matter. So consider yourself warned. And now, imagine you're out one day and you see someone dump a bunch of babies on the side of the road. Then you see a man with a hatchet. He walks over to the babies and starts, well, you get the picture. What would you do? Give him a thumbs up, take a selfie, assemble the Avengers, or try to stop the man right there on the spot? Now, with that in mind, I ask you these questions. What is the difference between that scene and the everyday scenario inside thousands of abortion clinics? What are the essential differences between what's in the mother's womb, the unborn, and what's outside the mother's womb, the born, that justifies the mass elimination of the former, but the collective protection of the latter? Well, to help you answer that, I present to you the SLED test. What's that, you say? Well, it's this, I say. Does being a human being with human value and human rights have anything to do with our size, level of development, environment, or degree of dependency? Is a large middle-aged man more human than a smaller 14-year-old boy? Should a fully developed female be granted more human rights than an 8-year-old girl who is not as developed yet? Is someone more worthy of life if they live in a mansion in America and less worthy if they live in a shanty in Africa? Is it okay to eliminate a nursing boy, but not his 6-year-old sister simply because the nursing boy is more dependent on his mother? No, 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 and of course, no. So then the unborn isn't any less human, void of their human value and human rights simply because of SLED, right? So now what? Well, some claim it's in the science, man. Just follow the science, they say. But when we do, it's clear from the earliest stages of development, the unborn are distinct, living, and whole human beings. In fact, the scientific evidence has been so clear for so long that even way back in 1981, a U.S. Senate report stated this: physicians, biologists, and other scientists agree that conception marks the beginning of the life of a human being, a being that is alive and part of the human species. There is overwhelming agreement on this point in countless medical, biological, and scientific writings. Okay, now fast forward a few decades, high-res photos, 3D scans, and brilliantly detailed ultrasound help us see with our own eyes what's in a human being's womb. And guess what? It's a human being. What else would it be? A piano? A whale shark? Is common sense. So now what? Well, there are those who actually know it's a human being. It's implicit in their language, but they use emotional appeals like, he's a financial burden. I don't want it. It's an emotional drain. It's not my fault. I'm not ready. It's not fair. She'll stop my professional progress. It'll get in the way of my desires and dreams. It's cruel for an unwanted child to be in this world. The child would be a product of incest. I can do whatever I want with my child, okay? Can you use any of those to justify the killing of the born? No. So then why the unborn? Look, enough is enough. This topic might be psychologically complex, but it's certainly not morally complex. We all understand that how you feel doesn't justify what you do or get to do. I mean, think about it. Your Honor, the reason I ran over those people is because they're an emotional drain. Officer, I know I killed those people, but if I didn't, it would have stopped my professional progress. And now, allow me to add this for good measure. When it comes to the possibility of actually hurting or killing a human being, shouldn't we err on the side of precaution? I mean, most of you wouldn't run over a box in the middle of the road if for a second you thought there might be a puppy or a kitten in it, right? But why not go to the same lengths to save and protect human babies? Just asking. Bottom line, human beings, all human beings, from the moment of conception have value simply because they are human beings, made in the image of God, period. Psalm 139:13 declares that God knitted you together in your mother's womb. So precious is life that God commands us not to murder, but instead tells us to love one another and do nothing out of selfish ambition. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. The minute we think we are more valuable than others for any reason is the minute we think others are less valuable. And that line of thinking is the root of racism, sexism, massacres, school shootings, bullying, hatred, and all kinds of other injustices that most of us rightfully stand against because we don't want human beings to be hurt or mistreated. And that should go for the unborn too. So this idea that the unborn are less human than the born and that it's okay to eliminate them has been debunked. Adios.
Amen.
Follow it? For us old people, we need to slow it down. Okay, now you can put the other one on there. And I've got a bunch of things that I'm going to share here, but we'll go with it best we can. That's my time limit.
When you're done.
I like it when, some of them have a clock, but I like it when they got a calendar on there. Okay. Baptist for Life was started in 1990. So we have gone for 31 years with this ministry of Baptist for Life. And it was the number one goal of Baptist for Life is not to stop abortion. Our number one goal is to reach people for Jesus Christ. Many times when people are going through crises, they're more apt to listen to what someone might share with them about the hope in the future. I mentioned, I work as a chaplain of 2 racetracks, and I've had, I think, 6 funerals of people that were connected with the racetrack. It's a great opportunity to share the gospel. In fact, as a pastor, in all the years that I was pastoring, one of the most effective ways of sharing the gospel is at a funeral. You have a lot of people that are at a funeral that probably wouldn't go to church, but they're going to hear the gospel and be confronted with the reality of death. And so anyone that comes into one of our pregnancy centers, we've started 5 of them in the state of Wisconsin, anyone that comes into one of our centers, they get the gospel presented right up front. There's a lot of ministries out there, pro-life ministries, but they're reluctant to share the gospel because they're afraid they're going to hurt people's feelings or chase people away. But the truth is, even if you stop an abortion, people are still going to go to hell.
Yep.
But if you reach them for Jesus Christ, then they're not as apt to get an abortion. We'd like to say they wouldn't get an abortion, but I'll share with you some statistics that say that that's not necessarily true. Nan and I have been in it. We just finished 9 years. We're in our 10th year now of doing Baptist for Life in Wisconsin. My goal is that I wanted to do this until I'm 80. And then as I was sharing this morning, my idea of retirement is I'm going to close in prayer and I'm going to keel over in front of everybody. Not today, I'm not planning on this, but I have a retirement plan that's out of this world. And so I'd like to do this for 3.5 more years, and pray for me, because this year I have been going through some real problems with some health issues. And some days I have good days, and some days I have bad days. And but then I remember Hezekiah pleaded for God for more time. You remember that?
Yep.
God gave him 15 years. Now, the irony of that is, God said, get your house in order, your time is up. He was only 39 when God said that. And he pleaded for more time. God gave him 15 years. The sad thing of it is, in that last 15 years, he never did anything significant for God. All of his reforms were done in the first 14 years of his leadership. He came on the scene, he was a king at age 25. And so in his first 14 years, he did all of his reforms and stuff like that. And sadly, in that last 15 years, his son Manasseh was born. And Manasseh was the most wicked king that the Judah nation had in those times. And so I'm not telling God, give me 3.5 more years. I'm saying, Lord, if you want to take me now, you can. Okay, but I would kind of like to do it 3.5 years. Well, then I started going through all these troubles, and my devotions came to the book of Job. Ooh. I don't really consider I'm in the same level with Job, but we'll keep on going. We believe in the sanctity of human life. Children are heritage of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is his reward. And by the way, enjoy your children at all stages of their life. They grow up too fast. We spend too much time, parents, looking forward to the next step and not enjoying the one past there. We need to do that. We have, I believe in accountability, and I like to keep people up to date on what's going on. We put out a Proclaimer newsletter 4 times a year. There are some copies on my table back there. We encourage you to pick one up. If you would like to get that sent to you, there is a sign-up sheet. If you have an email address and you put your name and email address on that sign-up sheet on our table, you'll automatically get it when it comes out. And it's about what's going on in the world. Planned Parenthood gives us a lot of ammunition of things to keep you aware of right now. We also put out a monthly prayer letter, and if you sign up on that sheet, you'll automatically get that as well. We do send it to your churches, but you know how pastors are, sometimes it doesn't get any further. But if you would like to get a copy of it, we like to let you know what's going on in Baptist for Life in the state. And then I came up with this idea called Praying Army for Life. And technically, it's my PAL letter. And around Thursday or Friday, I send out an email letting people know what happened the week before, where we were, where we're going to be this weekend, so we can have a lot of people praying for us. The only reason I've survived in the ministry as long as I have is because there's been a lot of people praying for me. I know when I went into the ministry, I said, Lord, I can't be good all the time. I can be good maybe for a week at a time, but that's about it. You know what I'm saying? I know. But there has been a lot of people praying for me. And so I send this out, and if you'd like to be a part of what we are doing and praying for us and being aware of what's going on, in order to get on that one, you have to email me at info@bflw.org and just say, I want to be on your PAL list, and I will put you on. The reason that I do that is I know that if you'll take the time to email me, you'll probably take the time to pray for me. I don't want just a lot of people on there. I want people praying. And I really do believe in the power of prayer. Now, if you can't remember that email address, you pick up one of our prayer cards. Instead of just using it for a dartboard, you could use it because our address is on there and the email address is on there as well. Okay? But I do only have about 50 people on that PAL list, but I do appreciate their prayers. We have started the Alpha Women's Center in Milwaukee. It was started in 1993. Holly Hickey is the director of that. She is going through chemo treatments for, she has cancer. Her and her assistant both got COVID. They went through that. Her assistant, Sue Hoppa, also had her voice box paralyzed and vocal cords paralyzed. You know, it's kind of like the devil is trying to really wreak havoc on all of this. You might want to pray for Holly and the work that she is doing. She's still hanging in there and still wants to continue on with that ministry. The Access Women's Center was started in Madison in 1998. Stephanie Larson is the director of that. And all of the other centers are having some challenges because of this COVID stuff and that. People reluctant to come, or because they have to stay home with their children because their children were in school and that, they're having a hard time coming to that. The Agape Women's Center was started in 2003. My wife is actually the director of that one in La Crosse that we started when I was pastoring in La Crosse. We just had kind of a fun day and a celebration of all the churches in the La Crosse area that supported. When we started that one, it was different than the other ones. We had a fellowship of area churches that met once a month and all of that, and I suggested that we all start a pregnancy center, and they all came on board. But what we did is we made the pastors and assistant pastors automatically on the board of the Agape Center, and it has worked out very, very beautifully there. And in fact, I should try to get your pastor on the board of the Alpha Women's Center. That would give you a better contact with it. But It really is a blessing, and working together with the pastors. Then the Assurance Women's Center in Appleton that started in 2007, Sarah Whitelick was the director of it, but she had to step down because she was having her third child and felt that she needed to stay home. My daughter-in-law, Gina Buhrow, Scott Buhrow's wife, my son Scott is pastoring a church in Stevens Point that I pastored from 78 to 82. When he was a teenager, now he's a grandfather and he's pastoring the same church, but his wife is now the director of the Assurance Women's Center in Appleton. And pray for them because it is a kind of a challenge. Gina lives in Stevens Point, and the center is in Appleton, of course. And then we did start last year in January the New Focus Center in connection with Calvary Baptist in Watertown. Due to the COVID and everything getting shut down, that one has kind of been put on hold, but they are starting it. I have shared with people my dream when I came on board with this ministry of an AIM program. Now, you're down here in the Racine area. It's Mount Pleasant, I know, but it's in the Racine area. And ironically, as much as you'd like to get involved with up there in the Alpha Center, women from this area probably are not going to go all the way up to the Alpha Center to get help. And so I had suggested a program called AIM. Now I noticed that all of our centers started with A other than the New Focus. And that was so that it would be the first one on the alphabet in the, on websites and in the phone books and things like that. So I came up with this idea of the AIM program, which actually means Assistance in Mothering. And it would be a program that a local church could have if they had a couple of rooms in their own church, where it would be a ministry out of their local church where they wouldn't have to rent a separate building, and it would be a ministry to provide the opportunities for women who find themselves in a crisis pregnancy or having difficulties where they could get some help. All of our pregnancy centers have what they call a Learn and Earn program, whereby women coming in, they can get a free pregnancy test, and they can sign up for a Learn and Earn program whereby doing Bible studies, memorizing scripture, or attending church can earn diapers, formula, baby clothes, baby formula, baby furniture, and help them with their ministry. And a lot of this in our pregnancy centers, they work with women who have little children that need help. It's not just about pregnancies or about stopping abortion, but it's ministering to ladies in need. And ironically, Greg Coomer up at Beth Haven Baptist in the shadow of Lambeau Field. Actually, they bought some other property and are going to build another building, but he and his wife had a burden for this ministry and actually started an AIM program out of their church. And we're excited about that. And actually, my daughter-in-law, Gina, wanted to do that in Stevens Point. And that's kind of a long range because she's working with the one in Appleton now, but eventually I'd like to start something in Stevens Point. So pray about that. It might be something that the Lord might lay. I know you're really busy and all of that kind of stuff, but it's something that it's a ministry. You need to have at least 2 women that have a real burden for this ministry. The reason I say 2 women is because one woman would just give up if she didn't have somebody else to cheer her on in this, to have a ministry, and then the church get behind it, that kind of a ministry. What makes humans different from all other life? We were created in God's image. And the truth is, a couple of years ago I had a message on that. When we are created in the image of God, that's why God takes it personally, how you treat a fellow human being, because God feels it's like treating him that way, because he created him in the image.
Amen.
And that also means that we are special and other people are special as well. Animals are not created in God's image. Humans are God's special, unique creation. God given dominion over the rest of the creation, and he loves people so much he sent his son to die for them. And the soul and the spirit of human lives on forever. That's not true of animals. We're going to live, we are given eternal life in heaven when we accept Jesus Christ. But the truth is, every one of us is going to exist somewhere for eternity.
Amen.
And we're either going to be given a glorified body to enjoy in heaven, or we're going to be given a unglorified body to live for eternity in hell. We have to make the choice of what we're going to do. God values the human life above all life, the young, the old, the handicapped, and he values the life of the preborn child. And he even reminds us that thou hast possessed my reins, thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. My substance was not hid from thee when I was made in secret. Thine eyes did see my substance, yet being imperfect. And in thy book all of my members were written, which in continuance were fashioned, when as yet there were none of them. How precious also are thy thoughts unto me, O God, how great is the sum of them. The sad part here is the most dangerous place for a child to be in America is a mother's womb. That should be the safest place. In January 22nd, 1973, the Supreme Court, it became legal through all 9 months of pregnancy to murder a baby in the womb. Norma McCorvey was the Jane Roe that they based that all on. She never had an abortion. She had a daughter. She put her up for adoption, and they were reunited before she died. And actually, Norma McCorvey became pro-life before she died. It was interesting because Operation Rescue moved into the building next door to them, and she became friends with them, and she eventually left the Planned Parenthood and became an advocate for Operation Rescue. 65 million preborn children have been killed by abortion, and as I was mentioning some fellows back here today, I can't believe, there's a lot of people that are saying, banking on the rapture to bail out the United States. I can't believe that God's going to do that when for 48 years we've had the legalization of totally innocent people being murdered, and that God's going to give the United States a free pass. I believe that we're heading for some judgment here. And unfortunately, a lot of innocent people will be suffering from that. It legally sanctioned it. Here's some abortion facts. An estimated 43% of all women will have at least one abortion by the time they're 45 years old. 47% of all abortions are performed on women who have had at least one previous abortion. In other words, almost 50% of them have a second. 64.4% of all abortions are performed on never married women, and married women account for 18.4%, divorced 9.4%. 1% of all abortions occur because of rape or incest, and 6% of abortions occur because of potential health problems regarding either the mother or the child. And by the way, one of the things, the basis for legalizing abortion was the health problem.
Yep.
And all a woman has to do is go into a doctor and say, I'm sick of being pregnant. That's a health issue. But those are the two reasons why they wanted to give the opportunity and make it legal to have an abortion, because of potential health problem or incest. 93% of all abortions occur for social reasons. The child is unwanted or inconvenient, or in some cases is just the wrong sex. They wanted a girl and it's a boy, or they wanted a boy and it's a girl. In fact, in China, when they had zero population growth and were only allowed to have one child, they wanted to make sure it was a boy to carry on the name, the family. And so they were aborting all the girls. Well, all of a sudden now they have a shortage of women. Who could have saw that coming? Duh. Here's some more appalling facts. And this is where I was talking about Protestants. Women identify themselves as Protestants, obtain 37.4% of abortion in the United States. Women with no religious affiliation obtain 23.7% of all abortions. Catholic women account for 31.2% 3%. Notice that? Those with no religious connection at all must have to have an abortion. Okay? Jewish women count for 1.3%. But this is the sad one, folks. 18% of all abortions are performed on women who identify themselves as born-again evangelical. They say. That's why I say they're not as apt to have an abortion. Let me tell you what happens. Many times you'll have people that will be very strongly pro-life. They think it's wrong to have an abortion. And suddenly their teenage daughter gets pregnant. And the embarrassment of it, maybe they're a deacon, or they're pastors, or something like that, and the embarrassment of it, they'll sneak off to another state and get an abortion, not telling anybody about it. But they're still very pro-life. It's just that they wanted to avoid the pot. The reason I know that's true, it happened in my church. It was before I was the pastor of it, but I found out about it. I caught a young couple in the teenage couple in the youth group. They got girl got pregnant. Mother took her to another state, got an abortion. Her father never knew that she was pregnant. But they were very strong pro-life people. Except when it comes to the rubber meets the road. That's where, you know, it's been a blessing. We've had some special speakers for our rallies and even for some of our pregnancy center rallies. And you meet people like Dr. Buhrow. Dr. Buhrow was the president of Northland. His daughter actually got pregnant out of wedlock. And he and his wife actually raised their grandson. Randy King also had a daughter. But they didn't cover that up. And you can say, oh, it's terrible that it happened. Yeah, it was terrible that it happened. But you don't cover it up and add to that by and pretending that you're something you're not.
Amen.
To be honest with people. 52% of women obtaining abortions in the U.S. are younger than 25. Women aged 20 to 24 obtain 32% of all abortions. Teenagers obtain 20% of all abortions. Girls under 15, about 1.2. The number of abortions represents the entire population of Wisconsin, Minnesota, North and South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Mississippi, Arkansas, and Missouri. All of those combined. And now, from 2020, you can add Alaska and Vermont onto that list. The total population, not just each state individually, but total together. But the Bible says it's clear that life begins at conception. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee, and before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee and ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. Jeremiah 1:15. Here is about John the Baptist. He shall be great in the sight of the Lord, and shall drink neither wine or strong drink. He shall be filled with the Holy Ghost, even from his mother's womb. That was John the Baptist when God spoke to Zechariah. Remember who it was in the Old Testament where God spoke to the parents and told them about the child, the son they were going to have? Do you remember who that was? No. Told them about their son and what he was going to do.
Oh, Samson.
It was Samson, yeah. Well, John the Baptist, he did pretty well. By the way, it's kind of interesting that here he was, John the Baptist. Was he a good testimony for God?
Yes.
He did exactly. He came on the scene to prepare the hearts of people for the coming Messiah, right? And then one day, gets his head chopped off. Duh. There's got to be a heaven. God is guaranteeing, you know, because things don't always work out fairly down here in this earth. But we know that in the end, the Lord's going to bless. But Samson, he didn't turn out so well. He had that opportunity. Talks about the free will of man. I wonder if we're living up to what our potential of what God intended for us to be. just because God gives us potential doesn't mean we're all using it, right? Life begins at conception. This is Samuel Armist's tiny hand is gripping Dr. Joseph Bruner's finger just as Bruner completes a surgical procedure on a 21-week-old unborn infant. He's still in the womb yet. And this is that young man today. Facts we need to share. Fetal heart begins to form 18 days after conception. There's a lot of states that are passing the heartbeat bill, stating that as soon as you can detect a heartbeat, it's illegal to abort them. And the irony of it is that the heart will start beating before you know you're pregnant. So for all intents and purposes, it outlaws abortion in that state. Now, part of the reason that states are pushing that is to force the one of these rules to go to the Supreme Court. Because when they passed Roe versus Wade in 1973, they said, we don't know when life begins. But when we do conclude when life begins, we're going to have to revisit this and decide what we're going to do. And right now, because of Donald Trump, we've got a lot of conservative judges on the Supreme Court to the point where it could get overturned. And Planned Parenthood has been reluctant to push for them to go to the Supreme Court because of that. But that's one of the reasons why they're pushing for them. Measurable heartbeat, 21-24 days after conception. Fetal brain waves begin to form 23 days. Brain waves produced like 6 weeks. 8 weeks after conception, the stomach, liver, and kidneys of the baby are functioning and fingerprints are formed. 9 weeks, the unborn child can feel pain. By the way, we have a 20-week abortion ban in the state of Wisconsin now because they had said they don't feel pain until 20 weeks. But in truth, they feel it 9 weeks. Fact is, if you watch an ultrasound of a baby being aborted, they are doing everything they can to get away from that forceps and knife when they're cutting them apart. 9 weeks, squints, swallows, moves tongue, makes fist. 18 weeks, vocal cords work and they can cry, and they do cry during the abortion. 20 weeks, has hair on the head, weighs 1 pound, 12 inches long. My wife says you don't like this, and I usually say, that's not an absolute. Most of my kids came out bald, but 24 weeks, 56% of the babies survive premature birth. God demands that we reverence and protect human life. Innocent blood be not shed in thy land, which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance, and so blood be upon thee. And I cannot imagine any more innocent human life than a baby in a womb. 6 things that the Lord hates, and one of those is hands that shed innocent blood. And here we're reminded about our responsibility. Sometimes people will say that's not our problem. They're not making us abort our children. But that's kind of what the Germans said when they were murdering the Jews. It's not our problem. They're not murdering us. And we are going to be held responsible for whether we spoke up or did anything. What keeps the nation focused on the sanctity of human life? And this is where it all started. Back in the 60s, when they were taking the 10 Commandments out of our court system, taking the Bible out of our schools, because the foundation has to be on first the existence of God, the immortality of the soul, and the future state of rewards and punishments. In fact, when this country was founded, the basis was that the Bible is the standard of what is right and wrong. All laws were passed based on what the Bible said. But when they threw out the Bible as a standard, now it's a matter of the majority votes on what's right and wrong. That's why we have homosexuality, why we have transgenderism, why we have all these other kinds of things that are going on that we are accepting as normal. Well, the Bible states what is normal. Years ago, when I was actually pastoring in Stevens Point, they had come up with a thing at that time where students, high school students, could call in and they could get all kinds of information from how to fill out a job application and all kinds of things like that. And one of them was on what is homosexuality. And they had put it down as it was an alternative lifestyle, that man was created that way with those certain kind of desires. And so they had sent all of those manuscripts, particularly that one, to the preachers of the area to sort of give them a heads up on what was going on. And I got it, and I went to the meeting that they were having, and I had a little Baptist church, and I shared with them that you're telling us that we're supposed to accept something that God says is wrong, is sin. And we don't have a right to decide what's right and wrong. The Bible already establishes what's right and wrong. Well, you know, it's just a little Baptist church where they care. And there was a woman there that was representing the whole Catholic diocese and all of the schools there. And she said, I'm here to let you know that you're either going to have to change that one on homosexuality, or we're going to shut your whole business down. We're going to do everything we can to shut you down. And so, well, the priests in Milwaukee said it was okay. So you're not in Milwaukee now, you're in Stevens Point. So that was a shocker for them. But this is one of those things, when you take the standard away from the Word of God, then it's just the majority rule. If God says it's sin, if it's wrong no matter how many people voted something different. And so now what you have is what they call the law of the tiger and the shark. Whoever is in rule are the ones that set the rules. We have in our country about 47 of pro-life and pro-choice, with 6 kind of on the fence. And the only way our kind of government works is if the majority of the people have a sense of right and wrong. But we're getting to the point of where we don't have a majority that have a sense of right and wrong. Margaret Sanger was the originator of the Planned Parenthood. It wasn't her idea to call it Planned Parenthood, but that sounded like a good name that they established at that time. This is a little bit of her background. I'm going to share with you some of the quotes so you get an idea of what her mentality was. The objective is unlimited sexual gratification without the burden of unwanted children. That was one of her quotes. The most merciful thing that a family does to one of its infant members is to kill it. We should hire 3 or 4 colored ministers, preferably with social service backgrounds, with engaging personalities. The most successful educational approach to the Negro is through a religious appeal. We don't want a word to go out that we want to discriminate the Negro population, but that's exactly what she wanted to do. She was as eugenic, she believed in eugenics. That meant you get rid of all the undesirables. That meant all of the handicapped, mentally or physically handicapped, and all the blacks, to have a superior race. Today's eugenics is suggested by the most diverse minds. She's saying that most intelligent people would, the most adequate and thorough avenue of the solution of racial, political, and social problems. Our failure to segregate morons who are increasing and multiplying demonstrates our foolhardily and extravagant sentimentalism. In other words, get rid of all of those. Birth control must lead ultimately to a cleaner race. Both the advocates of birth control and eugenics have the same goal, and that is the elimination of the unfit. The government should give certain descended groups, those with bad genes in our population, a choice of segregation or sterilization. She even believed that couples, when they got married, should have to get permission from the government whether they could have children or not, and the government would determine whether they were healthy enough mentally and physically to provide good children. Okay? The third group of society are those irresponsible and reckless ones having little regard for the consequences of their acts, or whose religious scruples prevent their exercising control over their numbers. There's no doubt in my mind of all thinking people that the procreation of this group should be stopped. And she did not like the church, because the church has always been the champion of the underdog, you know, and helping people out. Said, you're just propagating them. You need to let them die off so that we have a cleaner and more healthy race. Only one replied to a request for higher birth rate among the intelligent, and that is to ask the government to first take the burden of the insane and feeble-minded from your back. Mandatory sterilization for these is the answer. The grosser, the more obvious, the undeniably feeble-minded should indeed not only be discouraged, but prevented from propagating their kind. And the goal of birth control is to create a race of thoroughbreds. And she even called these lives of hopeless reputation and mentally and physically damaging their human weeds. That was her mentality of that. So, as a result of that, Planned Parenthood, sex is a normal part of a relationship with another individual, and you know that just by like TV programs that they have nowadays. That's the kind of mentality they have. The only wrong is when against the will of another. Contraceptives should be used to prevent unwanted pregnancies and sexual diseases. And if you find yourself pregnant, you can choose to abort the baby. Now, here's the one thing that people get a little upset with me at. But Margaret Sanger, during the turn of the century, she had smuggled contraceptives into the United States. There was a time in the United States it was illegal to have any kind of birth control or contraceptives. And she actually went to jail for that. And she was the one who was behind the birth control pill. And in fact, back years ago, and back in the 60s and that, when we were young, they came out with the birth control pill. That was the answer to all the solutions. Women were actually putting their daughters on birth control pills because it would help their complexion clear up, help them to be more regular on their cycles, and also prevent pregnancy. And she was an advocate. It was a big lie, and there were a lot of consequences that they were not letting people know as a result of the birth control pill. But there were a lot of people when they got married because they wanted to control their family and stuff like that were going on them. And it was the answer. The RU486 pill, are you familiar with that at all? That's the pill that they take, that's the morning after pill. That was also by Planned Parenthood coming up with that as a result of that, where people, if they do have a wild affair or something like that, they can take the morning after pill and that will abort the baby from attaching, okay? So, technically, there was a lot of people, as a result of this, the world responded, we no longer believe. And I'm talking about not just the unsaved world. There's a lot of Christians that believe that, no longer believe God is the one who opens and closes the womb. We're going to decide when we're going to have children and when we're not. I don't think the Bible ever tells us that God isn't in charge of that. Was it true in the Bible that God opened and closed the womb? And we need to stop playing God. It needs to be in God's hands. We'll use drugs and other means to control what and when our family will be. Actually, my wife's sister and her husband, when they got married, they didn't want to have children right away. So she went on birth control. Later on, when they were ready to have children, found out she couldn't get pregnant. They ended up having to adopt themselves. And I'm not saying that was the way of God judging them or anything like that, but the truth is, we need to leave that in God's hands. Allow God to be God. Contraceptives are used by both married and unmarried women, and almost 50% of the people believe it's okay to have an abortion today. Now, pregnancy centers, not ours, but I mean all of them in the country. Some of their accomplishments, they've served 1.85 million people, provided 267 million in free services, carried out 486,213 ultrasound, gave 1,290,079 packs of diapers, supplied 2,033,513 baby outfits, and not a single pregnancy resource center is run by a pro-choice activist. So, we must tell people the truth about abortion and pray God will open their eyes. Abortion is murder. Abortion kills children. Abortion harms the mother. And now, not only is there infanticide, actually there are people that are saying that they ought to have, the parents ought to have up to a year after the child is born to decide whether they're going to allow their child to live or not. Some are even saying it up as high as 3 years. After all, you don't remember when you were 3 years old, so you don't really have a conscience until then. The one that I'm concerned about is this euthanasia, deliberately ending the life of the unwanted. I told my kids I just wanted to live to be old enough to be a burden to them, and they tell me I'm already there. But that's one of those concerns that we have. So what can we do? We can win others to Christ. We can teach children the Bible truth about sanctity of life, speak out publicly for biblical value, support pro-life issues, causes, and distribute pro-life literature, pray for the end of legalized abortion, and vote biblically. We didn't talk about voting Democrat or Republican. Look at where they stand on biblical issues and vote for them. Unfortunately, we don't have any that are absolute biblical, but there are some that are more biblical than others. You can encourage church to place Baptist for Life and vision budget so guys like me can keep on going. From a member of Baptist for Life, on my table I have a brochure like this. If you fill one of these out for $35 for an individual or $50 for a couple, you can be a member of Baptist for Life and support what we are doing as I travel around the state and as we try to start. I'd still like to start another pregnancy center in Eau Claire before I retire, but pray about that. I don't know how much we can do. Contact state's legislators. Let them know where you stand. We do have on my table, I have a sheet like this. It's got all the assemblymen on one side and all the state senators on the other side with all their contact information. If your pastor tells you that there's a bill comes up in Madison, that you need to let your assemblyman or your senator know where you stand, that does make a difference down in Madison. It really does. It's the most effective tool that you have. You can pick up one of those off our table and contact them. You can help start a church pregnancy center, the AIM program I talked about. We have an essay contest. I'm really encouraging schools, all the high schools. I have a couple of schools that will do that, where they require all of their high school English teachers to write an essay. And if you take one of these, it's got the information there. You go to the website, and by the way, you can use that. Is yours ACE school?
Yes, sir.
You can use that in there too. But there are awards of $400, $200, and $100, and we have had some homeschoolers that have won some of these. And so we encourage you to do that. And by the way, in the 8 years that I've been involved with it, there were 3 times that all 3 of them were boys, the first, second, and third place. So we encourage you. You can take one of those along and check that out. Get involved in a pregnancy center. Help organize a fundraiser for your center, like you guys did. I appreciate that very much. What you did here. We're going to have a rally. That was last year's rally, and we're going to have the next rally is going to be at actually Calvary Baptist in Watertown, and it's going to be on April. April 23rd. It'll be in Watertown. Actually, Dr. Les Oliva is going to be our main speaker. Oh, where did that go? That helped me. I'll get there yet. There it is. There's numerous laws that have been passed enacting, as I mentioned, about that fetal heart bill. I'm going to leave it go with that. These are some bills that have been passed. The Choose Life license plate, it costs you $25 to get the Choose Life license plate. But that has gone to our pregnancy centers, and two of them, and they've got two of them, and on the third one of those, as far as getting grants, a couple $1,000 or $3,000, it does go. They said we had to have 500 on the road, and I think we have like 1,400 on the road now. We're third in vanity plate or specialty plates, only to the Brewers and the Packers right now. But we encourage you to do that. And the U.S. abortion rate falls to the lowest level since Roe versus Wade. And all the states are going down except Wisconsin. Wisconsin, because Milwaukee has this high-tech abortion clinic down there, they actually have increased in Wisconsin. Okay, that's Baptist for Life. Sorry about that.
That's good.
Any question?
Don't all answer at once.
Okay.
How long have you said you've been doing this?
9 years. I just started the 10th year in July.
Are there other states that do something like this?
Actually, Baptist for Life is actually unique to the United States of Wisconsin. They did have Baptist for Life in Michigan. Since they've changed their name to Life Matters Worldwide because they're not so strictly Baptist anymore. I would like to advocate that we be Baptistic. That might include some Bible churches that are Baptistic, you know, that is based on doctrinal conviction, which we ought to be done. I'm not advocating anything like that. Sure. I've had a church in Kansas that talked to me about coming over there and seeing if we could start something. At one time we were talking about Minnesota had one, but then they had a guy that stepped down. They couldn't find anybody to replace him, so they just dissolved. And so we had talked about expanding to Minnesota, Iowa, and Illinois. I tell people we're like the NFL. I got something in Wisconsin, but nothing in Minnesota, Iowa, and Illinois.
When you open one of those Baptist for Life centers up, or women's center, is it? It's a local church that runs it, correct?
Well, or a group of churches.
Or a group of churches.
Yeah.
Like the one in Madison, isn't the three Weiss brothers on there?
All three of them are on the board. Mark is the chairman of the board. Mike is the vice. Mike is the secretary now, and Fred is the vice chair. But they have other churches that are involved in it. Dean Howell is. Matt Abramson, that's at Wanakee. Paul Oswald, that's at Utica. And David Neal, that's at Fort Atkinson. And I'm actually on that board too. But I'm on the board there and the Alpha Center and the Agape Center. I'm not on the Assurance board, but I'm on all of them.
But it's those churches that keep that door open.
Well, yeah, and as I say, in La Crosse, all of the churches that are involved in it put their pastors on the board automatically, and that really works out well. Because if you're on the board, you're going to promote what's going on. Sure. More apt. And I know, like the Alpha Center, Dave Brown is on the board there. You got John Wooden, and I was listening on the radio this morning, and John Wooden and Dave Brown, and Rod Schuler, that's at Menominee Falls, is on that board. Dean Noonan is on that board. Dean Noonan is on that board too. So, and And when the pastors are involved, it does make a difference in how much the church gets involved. So, it just happened to be that way. It's amazing that in Michigan, when it was Life Matters Worldwide now, and they're lamenting because they can't get churches to get on board with their centers. But they started them backwards. They had groups of people that were burdened with the ministry, and they started a center, and then they tried to get churches to support what they're doing, and it don't work that way. Yeah.
How many women do you help on a daily basis in those centers? I'm sure it depends on the population, of course, but do you know about how many?
Actually, the Alpha Women's Center has been struggling because they haven't had as many people coming in because of the COVID and stuff like that. But usually, the Alpha Center will have more clients than the other centers do, about 10 times over. My wife is at La Crosse, and there are some days that she goes in there. They're only open on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and there's some days that nobody comes in. But they're still there, and they're seeking to do it. And we've come up with all different kinds of ways of getting clients and all of that. The most effective way is by word of mouth. If you help somebody out, they're apt to tell somebody else, and it passes on. We've tried every other kind of avenue of help.
The Alpha Center, before the COVID hit, they were working for over 100 clients.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How many?
Over 100 clients. They just were really busy, but they're right in the middle of the black area where they need to be.
And that's in Milwaukee, right?
Right, the one in Milwaukee. She has said that it is really cut back now. Part of that is because of all these stimulus checks and all this stuff, they don't need the help. You have to realize, when you get into a ministry like that, we can be very self-righteous, can't we? You know, we've got our act together, and we know that the women that come into these centers probably are going to ask for, you know, they're looking for diapers, formula, and baby clothes and stuff like that, so they can take their money and spend it on things that you might not approve of, okay? And sometimes we can lose the compassion for them because of that. And we have a tendency to get self-righteous ourselves. I appreciate my wife. She has a compassionate heart for that kind of thing. But it's a tough ministry, and you have to really believe that you're reaching people for the Lord. And it may be you go through a lot of these people that are just trying to take advantage of a situation. But my wife had a gal that actually she led to the Lord through the center, and she got her act together, and she actually joined the church that I used to pastor there in La Crosse. And she was bringing her children and even her sister's children to church. And she considered my wife the mother she never really had. And one Sunday she wasn't able to go with me. I think it was because my mom was still living with us, and difficult. And she was at church at Temple, and she gave my wife a hug and all that. And she went home that afternoon. Her husband stabbed her to death in front of the kid. And the only comfort my wife had in that situation is she did have a testimony of her faith in the Lord herself. By the way, one of the children that was adopted by our daughter was the daughter of the guy that did the stabbing. My daughter has heard his daughter. Actually, he had two children. She had two children by previous marriages.
The son is being raised by Pastor Dan Habager from Temple.
Over in
really?
Cross, yeah.
He's a good man. I like him.
Yeah. But anyway, that's the two. That was his children, the one that did the stabbing, and they saw it. It was done in front of them. Now you think about baggage, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir.
But there's someone needed to step up to the plate, and my daughter did.
She had two good examples.
You have a question?
Who funds for your employees in the church that the man in the church right now for family for all the mission
Gonna say it better, John.
it's the church's paper, the employees and all.
The church is yours to support, pay, your position, are you in a paid position?
Yeah.
Paid through resources through churches?
Yeah.
Or?
The offering that whatever you glean here will go to Baptist for Life. They pay me something every month to go doing what I'm doing. Lord bless it. I'm only part-time. Try to get to about 45 churches a year.
Oh, you're slacking.
Yeah. My board keeps telling me, you're only part-time. But I got to go to church anyway, and I'd rather preach than sit, so.
Yeah. It's always in you.
Yeah.
How long did you pastor in La Crosse?
24 years.
And how many Stevens Point?
I was only there 4 years. In fact, before I went to La Crosse, I'd never been any place longer than 6 years. I was at Wapaka for 6 years. But before that, everything was 4 years. And think about that. Now I've been doing this for 9 years. I'm in my 10th year. This is the second longest I've done anything.
Do you enjoy it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So if I play around with the numbers, if you are only able to visit a church on a Wednesday or Sunday, there's a capacity of 50 weeks, or a couple of holidays, maybe you'd be staying at home. So you say you try and do about 45 churches with 100 possible days out of a calendar year.
But 52 weeks in a year, I don't schedule any churches in December because obviously people are doing their Christmas things and stuff like that. And I use December as getting ready for the next year. Okay.
And we don't we have never done a Wednesday.
No, I've never done a Wednesday.
To make it easy, there's only 7 Sundays he doesn't fill.
Yeah, but there are times when I was a little younger, I'm 76 now. When I was a little younger, I used to do 2 churches, one on Sunday morning, one on Sunday night. I very seldom do that anymore. Once in a while, something like that might come up. And I have a large family, and I'm retired. And there are things that my family wants to do. And I've told any of them that if they want us for something special, and they go on a trip or something, or a vacation, that we're going to be there for them.
That's your first ministry, brother.
Yeah. So, anyway, I keep busier. Yes?
Brother, off the top of your head, in those different facilities that you have, and those who are involved in Baptist for Life right now, what would you say the average age of the people involved is?
As far as volunteers?
The ministry volunteers and so on and so forth.
My wife I don't know the other centers, but my wife runs the center there, and there's only 2 women that are involved in the center that are under 70.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I have 6 volunteers, 4 are in their 70s.
Yeah.
One more time.
I have 6 volunteers, 4 of them are in their 70s.
A lot of times the younger ones, and we realize that people have families and things like that, that it is difficult if you have a family of your own. Stephanie Larson, who's over in Madison, when she started that, she had a couple of kids and she was trying to homeschool them along with working at the center. And that was very difficult. I think they're both graduated from high school now and they're moved on, but that was a challenge.